What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. This is the Fantasy Football Fanatics podcast, the official podcast of thefantasyfootballfanatics.com. This is the show for Friday, February 16th. I'm your host, Griffin Palmer, joined by Jason Cabrera. What is up, Jason?
Not a lot, man. How you doing?
I am doing, I'm well. I'm very, very tired.
Yeah.
As most any of our longtime listeners know, we are performers. We are actors, and I've been on set for a TV show most of this week. I can't disclose any more than that, but it has been making me put in about 18 hours a day every day this week. So I'm tired. But guess what? I'm here for the show. Unlike one of our co-hosts. Ha! Shots fired. How are you doing, Jason?
I am also here, but only from I'm like 3,000 miles away, but I'm still here. I'm ready to go.
Details.
Do it.
I guess commitment.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
You know what? I get it, man. I get it. He's doing something extremely important. Is he doing something with his family?
No.
Is he out? Is he like building shelters for homeless puppies? Or?
No, he's not. No.
Is he helping an old lady? What's he doing?
He's watching a movie. he's watching.
Moving on.
Yeah. So when you guys think about who to send your questions to this coming season, take that into account, maybe. Anywho,
I never get questions, so obviously they like him better than me, so it's okay. He's a celebrity. He's the celebrity. That's what it is.
I don't know about all that. Anyway, we have an amazing show for you guys today. Today, we have our next installment in our series of our must-save shows for the offseason as we continue our prep to 2018. And in this show, of course, as we continue to break down the running back position from 2017. Again, these are the facts. These are the trends. These are the things we need to take into account as we switch gears into 2018. Of course, you can't just look at the final season numbers and that tell you the whole story because that's far from the truth. And also, of course, we're going to bring you all the top headlines from around the league. So quite a bit to get to today, and we're going to try and keep this tidy and within our normal time constraints. So let's get to it. As always, make sure you guys subscribe wherever you're listening. As we always like to rant off, we are most places, and we're working on getting even more. iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Podcast Addict, a lot of other podcast streaming services. Just search for The Fantasy Football Fanatics. You'll probably find us. Odds are you already have if you're listening to us right now. And we recommend subscribing because, as you may have also noticed, we are a year-round podcast. Go figure. You can also submit questions through various sources, as we always like to mention. On Twitter, at the FF Fanatics is the most common way. Facebook is at facebook.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics. You can email us at thefantasyfootballfanatics@gmail.com. Many other opportunities as well. And again, if you want to support the show, help us keep doing what we're doing, keep these lights on, allow us to keep bringing you guys this free product, which is what we want to be doing. We're here for you guys. You guys can support the show at patreon.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics. Get yourselves bonus perks along the way, including the bonus episodes every single week where we cover the much more advanced topics. We get into the IDP over there, the auction stuff, the daily, all that dynasty stuff, the really good stuff on a more regular basis. So if that's your speed, go check that out. Patreon.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics. Speaking of questions, we'll jump into a warm-up question, which we got via email. This one comes in from Dalvin in Ohio. Now, first off, hello. Now, he asks, the three of you seem to know your stuff and are seemingly competitive. I would say that's accurate so far, wouldn't you, Jason?
That's probably true. I think that's probably true.
I'm glad that our competitive spirit is portrayed through the podcast. His question is, who out of the three of you has won the most titles? Now, for starters, I want to break this down by simply saying it's much more difficult to compete when you have a podcast because it makes everyone seems to second guess you more. It makes trading a lot more difficult because everyone wonders, what do you know, that kind of thing. They think we're trying to pull fast ones, and of course we give away our takes on everything, so people tend to know what we're doing. So it has not been as easy as it's been in the past. Most people showing up to our drafts, even with our own personal rankings. Now, I know I have the most championships in our league of record and our dynasty league put together. I think I've got the majority in both those leagues individually, but I'm more curious about you and CJ. I don't know which one of you two has more titles.
Let's put it this way. Okay, let's put it this way. First off, Mr. Griffin Palmer is trying to be very humble right now, and he's failing miserably because it's not his natural setting.
I really am trying to be humble. I've got a lot of titles.
Griffin has by far the most number of titles. In fact, in our league of record, there have been 2 champions in that league
in its entire time.
And how long is the league? How long has the league been running now, Griffin? I don't even know, because I was added to the league after the league had already started.
Are you talking about our expert league or our dynasty league? Because we slate both of them.
The expert league.
The expert league is in its 6th season.
6th season. 5 championships out of the 6 have gone to Mr. Griffin Palmer.
Yes, that's the one you hear us reference a lot, which is where we do a lot of IDP in that one, extended rosters, auction-based drafting, the free agent budgets. The half-point PPR, as well as we do points for passing attempts and rushing attempts and all the individual tackles from the defensive players. It's a huge league.
Yeah, it's a big league. You got 2 tight ends, for crying out loud. You know?
Yes,
I mean,
it says enough right there.
Literally, you have to know everything. I mean, we've got every single position covered. You get a couple of defensive backs. Is it 3 linebackers?
We do
2 linebackers.
We set it up so you can run any option of your 11-man defense. We run 11 defensive players, so we have It's 3 linemen, 3 linebackers, 4 defensive backs, and then 1 defensive flex. So you can do that as a lineman,
no joke,
linebacker, or as a nickel corner.
Yeah, it's no joke. It's a no joke league, and Griffin's won it 5 times. I have won it the other time. I won last year.
Yes.
Now I will say for CJ has been in the championship. 2 years in a row.
Yeah, the last 2 years. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, last 2 years. In fact, and the only other time that's happened, other than Griffin, was me. I was in twice. I just happened to win the 2nd year.
Right.
So
and that was against CJ. So that was last year. So yeah, that's right.
And it was against CJ, right?
Yeah.
So I beat him last year, and then you beat him this year.
Right.
But like I said, CJ is getting better every year. But as far as championships total, I think I've only been playing. When did you bring me? I think I've been playing for 5 years or 4 years.
In our
4 years.
Dynasty League, you've been in that league for 4 or 5 years now. Yeah, that league's much longer running. That league is
right.
I think 11 years old is that Dynasty League right now, and I have won that one 7 or 8 times. I don't remember. I'd have to look at the plaque.
Shut up. I won that league this year. I believe it's 4 titles total in my 4 years of playing fantasy football. Because that Dynasty League was the very first time I'd ever played fantasy football. You know, so yeah, I've got 4 titles. Griffin's got a bajillion, and CJ I know has several. I don't actually know how many total he has though.
I don't know because I mean obviously we're talking about our big leagues here. As far as smaller leagues, I don't really track all that, and I have no idea how many CJ plays in outside of our big leagues. So again, I wish he was here, but he's too busy watching a movie. Midnight launches of things.
It's going to be a good movie though. I'll give it that.
It looks good. But anyway, so yeah, if you're taking advice, now you know whose advice to maybe take more seriously. Hey-o. Anyway,
I told you, it's not his natural setting.
I jest, though there's some truth to it. Anywho, let's move on to our top headlines from around the league, and we'll start with our league-wide headlines, starting in New York with the New York Giants, who have hired a new offensive coordinator, which is former Carolina Panthers offensive coordinator Mike Shula. I am not overwhelmed by this pick, though they do have Pat Shurmur now, so maybe he's going to handle more of it. Mike Shula is also their quarterback coach, I believe. So, I mean, we always jest about how the Panthers have had one of the less imaginative and more vanilla offenses the last couple years. I don't know how I feel about him being hired in New York. What are your thoughts here?
I don't know. I mean, this is the thing about this is that he's been kind of stymied, I think, because I think Mike Shula is more of a classic quarterback style guy, and he doesn't have a classic quarterback. He has the guy that we've talked about a lot, Cam Newton. You know, and this is a running quarterback who's going to run all the time, and I don't think Mike Shula likes that too terribly much. Now he's going to be in a system where he's got a classic West Coast offense style quarterback. So maybe this will be better? Question mark?
Maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. Pat Shurmur, he's done great things. I think he's going to do great things here, but I don't know if he's bringing Mike Shula in to more or less run his system or exactly what the give and take is going to be here. I don't know. I mean, this is a guy who's bounced around the league a lot. He's been offensive coordinator a couple places. He's been a quarterback's coach more commonly than not. So I I like that at least, but I mean, who's he going to be working with? We don't even know that yet. Is it going to be Eli by himself?
Probably Eli by himself, but with Pat Shurmur being there, like you said, I think it's going to be the Pat Shurmur show with guest starring Mike Shula on the side for the quarterbacks mainly. I think that's probably going to be what we see.
I mean, I would assume so. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the most notable thing I can say about him is he was pretty decently successful as the Alabama head coach, and
he has a pretty good dad.
Oh, true. So yeah, it's it'll be interesting to watch for sure. I am intrigued to see the imprint going into next year, though it's not like we're going to have a year of just Pat Shurmur there to weigh it against. So we'll see how it all plays out.
Right.
Underwhelmed by the hire, but I mean, I think it could work out. We'll see. Anywho, let's move on to the quarterback news, and we'll start in, where are we going? We're going to Chicago, where ESPN Bears reporter Jeff Dickerson believes that, quote, the writing is clearly on the wall that Mike Glennon will not be back for the 2018 season.
Well,
oh, man, it's hard being me. I only called this time, well, not this time last year because free agency hadn't started, but, a day or two into free agency when he signed this big contract. So, yeah.
I tried to be the optimist. I was the one of the two of you, because CJ agreed with you. I was the one of the two of you that was the optimist for Mike Glennon. I like the physical skills. He's tall, he's a big guy, got a good arm. But, I mean, come on. He just didn't – he was doomed to fail pretty much the whole time. They didn't really give him a lot of talent. They had the bargain bin receivers out there.
They did.
So – Trubisky's going to be the guy there, and Glennon is going to go away, and he'll probably be a backup somewhere.
Problem is that, he had not done much in his career. He ended up losing his starting job in Tampa Bay, and his contract was built clearly to be basically a one-year deal. I mean, he has $16 million cap hit this year, but if they cut him, it's only $4.5, so they can save $11.5 million by cutting him. And, of course, this was made even more obvious when they went out and drafted Mitch Trubisky. So, it's much easier to point out in hindsight. But at the time, it was obvious to me that he was a stopgap. It was a 3-year contract, and now here it is being all but confirmed. Reporters very close to the team saying that essentially they'd be shocked if he returned. And I would be as well, because They've sat their – no, they didn't even sit him. They've had their rookie for a year now. He has an offseason to develop, and he is the future there, they believe. So why keep this guy under contract, taking up a huge portion of their cap right now? No surprise there.
They do a lot with that.
Yeah, so another quarterback set to hit their this is going to be an insane free agency and draft period for quarterbacks. God. This never happens. Now, I mean, there's only, you could argue, maybe one or two franchise quarterbacks out there, but there are plenty of serviceable guys that in the right situation, they could set a team up to be very successful. So, and, a lot of these other guys, which are going to be very good backup quarterbacks. And as we saw anything this year, I mean, look at how many backup quarterbacks were essential for teams to make playoff runs. I mean, look at the Vikings and, of course, the Eagles, to name a few. Let's go to the running back position, where ESPN Broncos reporter Jeff Legwood believes that Denver will release or trade C.J. Anderson this offseason.
Doesn't shock me.
We had heard rumors about this. This was something that is not surprising to me. I don't think we'd really reported on it very much because it was a lot of just kind of rumblings in the background. It didn't have a lot of necessarily tread or traction, but it's starting to definitely pick up some steam. Where there's smoke, there's fire. And the more you look at it, I mean, he has had struggles staying healthy. I'm a believer in the talent of C.J. Anderson, and he's someone we're going to talk about a little bit more as we move on in the show, so we won't stay too long here. But, I mean, they've got a committee. They've got younger rookie guys that are on much more affordable contracts there, and they can cut him for no dead cap. So I don't know if necessarily they are. I think it's going to depend on how much they need to clear up to make a serious run at Kirk Cousins.
Right, yeah, that's the question. With most of these kinds of teams, especially the Broncos, who do have their eye on Kirk Cousins. And honestly, I think I think we've already said that would be the best fit for Kirk Cousins this year.
Absolutely one of. I mean, he'd be going into a situation where I think he would be able to make this offense work. There's the pieces. They just need the transmission to get it going.
Yep.
But, I mean, C.J. Anderson, he's been good when healthy. Okay, he's only played one full season, admittedly. But, I mean, he broke 1,000 yards. He had over 4 yards of carry last year, only 3 touchdowns. But he was sharing the ball with 2 other running backs. But he can also catch the ball. So, I mean, he's serviceable, and he's someone that defenses have to respect when healthy. So I would imagine that they hold on to him because Jamal Charles, I don't know if he'll be back. I mean, he might even retire for all we know. And that only leaves one guy there. So I don't know. We'll see how it all plays out, and we'll talk about this a little bit more upcoming. Yeah. Let's wrap up the news at the wide receiver position. We'll head to Arizona this time, where Arizona Cardinals wide receiver Larry Fitzgerald has reportedly told...
Steve's in Arizona right now.
Why are there so many Steves? Anyway,
we like Steves.
Yeah, apparently. So head coach Steve Kimes, you're right. So Jason, Cardinals fan, have you heard more about this? I'm sure you're monitoring this way closer than I am.
Everybody in Arizona pretty much figured he was going to come back. The guys that do the podcast said he was going to come back. All the players were saying he was going to come back. Everybody said he was going to come back. The only people that were being quiet about it were Bidwell and Kime. And now he's come forward and basically said, yeah, I'm coming back. So it's not a big surprise for everybody. What this does mean, though, is that more than likely Arizona is going to make a run at some veterans.
Absolutely.
They may make a strong run at Kirk Cousins. That would be someone that Larry Fitzgerald would love to play with. Also, Nick Foles is somebody else that I'm sure Larry would love to play with. Been in the league a while. Just got done with having a lights out postseason. So yeah, I would look for Arizona to make a real strong push for one of these guys. That also means look for them to start looking to drop some money somewhere, and unfortunately, that means we're going to see a lot of familiar faces walk out the door.
Yeah, a lot of defensive players on rich contracts, and we'll see if people are willing to restructure.
I don't know how much of the defense they're going to touch. I expect Smokey will be gone. John Brown will be gone. You'll probably see them try to move like Jared Valdir, who was our left tackle for a long time, until they moved into the right tackle. They may drop him.
John Brown's a free agent, isn't he?
He is a free agent. So yeah, they won't be going to pick him back up more than likely.
Okay.
But Valdir is not, and he is $8 million against the cap, so they'll probably drop him, or not drop him, but trade him. More than likely, they'll try to trade him to get that cap space, get that cap freed up.
Well, they also have some cap space available with Carson Palmer's retirement, so we'll see how it plays out.
Sure.
And this is something we were talking about before the show even started, how this is probably giving us all the evidence we need to know that they will make a run at a veteran quarterback, because as much as we like to believe Larry would be willing to, all the reports that we were hearing, and we all believe that he probably would have no desire to come back and help a developing rookie in what is probably his last season. We assume that he was told that, hey, we are going to make a run at one of these veteran quarterbacks, and that's probably what kind of sealed the deal and made him decide that he's coming back this year. He's going to finish playing out his contract. A name you didn't mention that I think would be interesting, though I'm not sure Steve Wilks and Steve Kimes' position. I know Bruce Arians would probably make a run at the guy because he likes these project quarterbacks that most people are down on, but what about Sam Bradford?
Yeah, Sam Bradford is someone else that so I do I do have a blog for the Arizona Cardinals that just talks about just the Cardinals, given that everyone who listens to the show knows I'm a huge fan. And in my blog, I said there were three names of veteran quarterbacks that have been in the league now a little while that I expect to see them make a run at. The first one is Nick Foles. The second one is Sam Bradford. I would expect them to look at him real strongly. He's got a lot of experience working out in several different systems. He's the most accurate passer of everybody that's available this year, including Kirk Cousins.
Yep.
And he has a lot, like I said, he has a lot of experience. The only problem with him is that he got the injury bug. He gets injured a lot. So that's why I wouldn't put him at the top of that list. And then the third name was Jacoby Brissett. They could probably get him the cheapest of everybody on this list, given that he hasn't had a lot of experience starting. He did get the start this year. He's got all the tools, got the big arm, and everything. So those three names, I think, are the three guys that Arizona will actually look really hard at.
So what you're telling me is I need to start reading your blog so we don't overlap. Got it. Anyway.
That's okay. You can if you want.
Yeah, I know, it's fine. Anyway, so yeah, that's the news. Not much to talk about, as you would expect in mid-February. So with that, let's move on to our topic of the day. And this is, of course, the lessons we learned in 2017. Now, we're breaking down what happened, who finished where, how they got there, what happened during the season to make them end up where they were. It was a mirage. Can they do better? Do we think there will be regression? we're going to talk. And if you want to hear the top 12, your number one running backs, you got to go back and listen to Tuesday's show because we're moving on. So at number 13, and remember, this is standard scoring. A lot of people ask why we don't do PPR, and that's because as much as we love PPR and we would love to do that or half point, the masses play standard, so that's what we reference everything out of. So your number 13 running back on the season in standard scoring is Devonta Freeman. Now, he finished with...
Or Devontae Freeman.
Devontae, depending on who you talk to. 164.2 fantasy points. Now, obviously a big letdown there because he was being taken as the 4th running back off the board, as the 6th pick in the first round. So he finished outside the running back one. Some argue that makes him a bust. It's kind of, case by case. This could have sunk your team a little bit. But what we saw here is a trend that we've kind of started to talk about a bit, and this is the Steve Sarkisian effect on the Atlanta Falcons. Kyle Shanahan leaves, Steve Sarkisian comes in, the whole offense regressed. And in a lot of ways, they regressed not like to the mean, because obviously the 2016 season, they just blew all their expectations out of the water. That was the outlier season for the team. They seemingly regressed considerably past that point to just a so-so year. Now, Devonta Freeman did miss time. He missed a couple games. He was banged up. If you stat him out over the course of a full 16 games, his attempts and his yards do kind of fall in line with his averages, so that didn't really change. His touchdowns did go down. He had 11 touchdowns each of the last 2 years. This year, he would have only gotten to about 8. He had 7 on the season. So not too exciting. He was involved in the passing game, but like most pass catchers and Matt Ryan, of course, throwing the ball, there was a bit of a regression. Less receptions, less yardage, less touchdowns. So, I mean, do we expect Devonta Freeman and this offense to kind of pick it up and get going better next year, or is this the new norm? What are your thoughts, Jason?
Well, I would expect them to get better. I mean, there's always some, like we said during the offseason last year, and we pretty much say every offseason, when there's a new offensive coordinator, when there's a new coach, you have to expect a little bit of regression because everybody's getting used to new terminology and a new mindset and a new way of doing things. And that's what happened to the Falcons. I mean, they were still a good team this year, honestly, but they regressed, obviously. And you got to look at Devonta Freeman's issues with his legs this year. He had a sprained PCL and MCL, he says, in his knee. So that probably played a very large part in the fact that he did not do what everyone was expecting to. And he's his big thing is elusiveness, being able to make guys miss. And when you got a sprained MCL and PCL, it's really hard to make somebody miss. So I would expect him to get better next year. I still am not a massive believer in Devonta Freeman just because of the size and the injury issues. So I would be very cautious with him moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, you always have to worry about the presence of a guy we're going to be talking about in a little bit, Tevin Coleman as well, taking away touches. But we know Steve Sarkisian is a believer in the lead back and a primary featured back. So that's seemingly held true. Yeah. It's just this whole offense really did regress. Now, injuries, like you pointed out, really, bad ones to try and be elusive with. So, I mean, that all played a factor. It'll be interesting to see how he continues on. But, I mean, Devonta Freeman, he's starting to get quite the laundry list of injuries through his young playing career. So, I mean, the risk with him is pretty high. He's currently going as the 12th running back off the board as the 5th pick in the second round. How does that sound to you, Jason?
In the second round?
Middle of the second.
That's rich. That's really rich. I wouldn't take him that early, I don't think. I think I'd take him in maybe the third round. Maybe the third.
So, just for reference sake, some players that are going around him. So, we have ahead of him. So, all right. So, being taken behind him are Christian McCaffrey. Would you take Devonta Freeman over Christian McCaffrey?
Yes.
All right. Mark Ingram.
No.
Joe Mixon.
Not even. No.
No. And Carlos Hyde, depending on where he goes, could really be.
I don't know yet. Yeah, I can't answer that question yet. Carlos Hyde doesn't have a team, so.
Yeah, some players going ahead of him, though. Would you take him over Jordan Howard?
No.
No, you take Jordan Howard. What about Leonard Fournette?
Yeah. So definitely take Leonard Fournette first.
All right, so more or less he's in place with where you like it. Just a couple of these guys are going a bit low. So, all right, so that's Devonta Freeman. I personally, I get the argument. I see it. We always talk about how these offenses sometimes take a year or two to gel. Maybe it'll get going with the slight changes and creases that they're making there in Atlanta this season. So middle of the second round, I could see the value in that. I, like you, am just not a big Devonta Freeman believer and fan. He makes way too much of his play on big explosive performances, and if he doesn't get those big plays, he is not consistent. So I like you think that might be a little rich, but I can see the value there. I could see him definitely going there, and I honestly, come draft season in August, I expect him to be going somewhere around there anyway. Let's move on to number 14. Oh, this guy. So anyone who's followed the show for any period of time knows this is kind of a darling of mine, but I'm officially off the train, and that is Lamar Miller.
God.
Look, he was really good in Miami, and we thought with all the extra volume he'd be getting in Houston, it would be a formula for just a great performance.
Whoa.
Well,
You got a mouse in your pocket?
Myself and various other analysts across the industry.
And various other...
Yes.
Let me tell you something about this guy for me. If you look at this season, this is kind of what I expected to see. He had a couple of good games, but those games were very touchdown dependent. Games he did not score touchdowns, he did not break double digits. Games where he did score touchdowns, like in Tennessee, Seattle, in Arizona, and Baltimore, he broke double digits. Other than that, he did not even get close to breaking 100 yards this season. The closest he got was in Tennessee with 75 yards. I don't like running backs that don't break 100 yards ever during a season. Even with his reception yards, it's not a lot. So yeah, I'm sorry, but I just can't. I don't like this guy. I just don't think he fits the scheme there in Texas. I think with the Texans rather, I think they need a plow horse, and that's not Lamar Miller.
Yeah, my problem with Lamar Miller this season, if you watch the game tape, there are times he just did not look motivated. He just seemingly kind of gave up, and that's not what you want to see out of a guy who you're paying a good chunk of change to. I mean, Lamar Miller, he was under contract last year for $6.5 million, so pretty decent chunk of change for an NFL running back. It's not excessive, but it's pretty decent. Now, the concern here is what do they do with him this season? And that will be obviously a huge impact on his fantasy value because, he's under contract for another 2 years. He signed a 4-year contract. And the biggest knock against him, Deonta Foreman, I believe it was a ruptured Achilles. I don't have it in front of me. Say what?
Oh, that too. And off-field issues.
And off-the-field issues. So I don't know if he'll be ready. If he is ready, he's probably going to be, really nursing that for the season. I mean, that's a hard injury to come back from. I could see a world where Lamar Miller does return, but, I mean, they could cut him and save almost $5 million. He's owed $6.75 million. They can cut him for only a $2 million dead cap. It's a narrative that I've been hearing pretty consistently. I don't think it's going to happen, though. I think they want the insurance policy, and with Foreman being hurt, I honestly think he's going to be back. Motivation is going to be key, but this team is going to be motivated when they have Watson back under center. I have to believe that.
That's the thing, man. With him in there, it changes the entire dynamic of this team, because he is the spark plug that runs this team now. And, I think that with him in there, Lamar Miller will have a little bit of an opportunity to be better. Mm-hmm. But I do think they're going to try to push Devonta Freeman a little bit and make him the guy.
I'm taking it back. I'm back on the Lamar Miller train. Let's do this.
Oh, good Lord!
No, I'm not. I don't buy he's going to be a running back one. I think he definitely has that upside, but I think the volume argument and the consistency, it's a hard sell at this point based on the 2 years we've seen now in Houston, where, like you pointed out, he didn't have, a single game where he broke 100 rushing yards. He played a full season this year, which obviously his body kind of gave out the end of last year. So, I mean, having other guys in the backfield really to help spell him clearly did help. But, I mean, numbers down across the board. His average attempts per game, his average yardage per game, his touchdowns on the season, his yardage on the season, all these things were down, even though he played, 2 more games. So it's pretty bad. But, again, I think that if the passing game gets going the way it's going, though, He's going as the 17th running back off the board as a late third-round pick. I would invest a third-round pick in a guy like Lamar Miller, who I think has running back 2 potential. You wouldn't take him as your number 2 running back with that upside?
Heck no.
No?
Heck no. For me, he would have to be a flex, maybe, and I still would be hesitant to pull the trigger.
And the thing is, I can't be mad at you for saying that because there's definitely enough he's going to be polarizing, I think, because we've been burned by him 2 years in a row, but the situation is still good there. And if they have to respect the passing game, which he can also catch the ball quite a bit, he actually went up in receptions, yardage, and his passing side of things was much better this year than it was last year. It was his rushing stats that were down.
But he had a better passer. I mean, when you got a better passer, of course your passing yards and everything's going to go up. I understand. I mean, you understand my side of it.
Absolutely.
I understand your side of it. I get it. And then that's why we are in this show, because we can speak to it. We can both argue the same way, and really it just comes down to: are you a believer? If you are, then listen to Griffin. If you're not, listen to me.
Why am I such a Lamar Miller truther? I
don't know, man, because you just told me you were off the train.
I know,
but
I talked myself back onto it.
Stepping back on the train.
I talked myself back into it. But I mean, it's all there. And I think it's because honestly, I used him in his years in Miami where most people didn't want to touch him, and he finished as a running back 1 for a number of years there. So it was kind of one of those sleeper, sneaky guys I was able to get in like the 5th, 6th round, which finished as an RB1. So he has a sweet spot for me. Also,
and it's going to be him on that. You're going to be on that train with him. You're going to be on that train with like Colby Fleener. And Brandon Marshall. You're just going to be sitting there on that train with those guys.
Brandon Marshall, I might see where he goes, but no, Colby Fleener.
Blake Bortles. All you guys are just going to be hanging out on that train.
Hey. Blake Bortles, I've used him in our league of record for 2 championship games in the last 3 years and won those games. So, hey, take that.
That's true.
I will say this, Lamar
Miller. Last year with him?
Yeah, Lamar Miller feels like he is ancient, but he's only going to be 27 this season too. So let's not forget he's not old. So
no, it's not an age thing.
I'm just saying he feels like he should be a lot older than that because he's already played in the league for 6 years. He came in really young, so we'll see. And I'm sure we'll get more defined things, and we'll have a lot of fun debates and stats to pull out when we get to our rankings with our projections. But yeah, as a late third-round pick, I would jump in on him there. I think that's a good value for him, for a guy you're getting as probably your RB2, or if you're going running back heavy, as your flex option running back. So let's move on to the number 15 running back on the season. We have Christian McCaffrey. 148 fantasy points. Where's
CJ when you need him?
Yeah, I know, right? The big fan.
CJ's guy right here.
Yeah. Christian McCaffrey, I mean, he was, I think, what we expected him to be, honestly. A lot of people thought he was going to be this, next great coming. Like we've seen the last 2 years. Todd Gurley in his rookie year, Ezekiel Elliott in his rookie year. Everyone thought Christian McCaffrey was going to probably be having that upside, which physically possible. He's very agile. He's gifted. He's usable in all 3 phases, but he was the complementary back to Jonathan Stewart. He only had 117 rushing attempts on the season. Now, counter that with 80 receptions. I'll give you that. As a PPR running back, he got you a ton of points. But, I mean, as a whole, it just 651 yards receiving. He was much better as a receiver than a rusher. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Look at the offense. We just got done talking about the fact that this was a very unimaginative offense, and it's just very odd to me because you've got a dynamic quarterback in Cam Newton, a guy that can make things happen with his legs. Now you've got this dynamic back in Christian McCaffrey, who you can move him around the field like a gadget player, but on every single down if you wanted to, and do a lot of really creative things with this offense, and yet they didn't, and that's what we're saying. Could he be that guy? Could he be Alvin Kamara? Yeah, he's got the skill set to do that, have that kind of impact on this offense, but not with the guys that were running the offense this last year. And like I said, when we were talking about this, I was the one who was the most down on Christian McCaffrey, and my main reasoning was because of the quarterback.
Right.
Cam Newton's going to run.
And quarterback is a huge reason why I think he struggled. Because, again, like you're saying, he would run. He does not look to his running back for dump-offs. He designs screens and plays. But, I mean, I don't have the stat in front of me. I was looking at some stats saying about how he actually led in receptions and all this other stuff for the position, and he had a high catch, high total catches, 80 receptions. But as I said, 651 yards, averaging 8.1 yards per catch. But he also had a huge amount of passes that he did not connect on. So it's quality of target, it's designed offense, it's how they use him. He is a complementary back. He's the third down back in this offense. I think as Cam Newton gets better at these design plays, these dump-off patterns, looking for him as an emergency dump-off option, I think he'll get better as he starts to develop and get used to doing that. And, of course, as Christian McCaffrey takes over more and more of the offense. But I just don't know if he will ever be this lead workhorse back. I mean, he's not a big guy. He's 5'11", 205, which I know was a knock against him coming out. They thought that he might be too small to take NFL hits. He played all 16 games, but, I mean, again, he averaged 2.7 yards a carry, had 2 rushing touchdowns on 117 attempts. So,
right.
Not great rookie year compared to a lot of the other rookie running backs, though. Again, the talent is there, the upside is there. If he had gone to a different team, I think we'd be a little more excited about him. But Carolina is getting a whole new look. They're bringing in new people. They're changing the offense. We'll see. So, I mean, I know there are a lot of big Christian McCaffrey fans out there, and, I mean, he finished 15th overall. He's going 13th overall in drafts right now as the 9th pick in the second round. Would you invest that draft capital into Christian McCaffrey?
No, I think I would take him in the third round just because I don't know what this offense is going to do. They're going to have a new offensive coordinator, obviously, and that's what have we already said? New offensive coordinator, things are going to regress.
Most likely.
I wouldn't do that.
Yeah,
I wouldn't do that.
I don't think I would either. I don't think I'd be looking for Christian McCaffrey before the third round, and probably not until about halfway through it. And that's, I think if Jonathan Stewart wasn't there, I would have a different stance on it. But with him there, I'm comfortable in saying that. I'd be curious to know CJ's take on this because he is definitely the biggest Christian McCaffrey fan out of the three of us, but he's not here to defend it. So I guess we'll get a better look at his stance on things as we get into our preliminary rankings in about a month. So with that, I guess we'll move on to the number 16 running back on the season, Alex Collins. Now, Alex Collins was undrafted because, of course, he was the sixth running back on the Ravens depth chart at one point. So kind of worked his way up and ended up having a pretty darn good year. For a long time, he was leading the league with over 6 yards a carry. Ended up finishing with about 4.6, so not as outstanding, but still really, really good. Okay, so as a Ravens fan, I've seen things, and I have some problems with Alex Collins. For some reason, the Ravens do not want to hand him the keys to the offense. They don't want him in as a three-down back. He can catch, but they used him very sparingly in that way. They used Javorius Buck Allen in that role primarily. They use Buck Allen more in the red zone. Danny Woodhead, if they keep him for another year, is obviously a three-down pass-catching back that they want to use. We have Kenneth Dixon coming back from injury. Terrence West, who knows what his status is going to be next year. There's just so many running backs there, and I don't know. Alex Collins was good. He was very good. At times, he was phenomenal. He was great. But as a
120 yards in Pittsburgh.
Absolutely. He had some monster performances. But this is such a diluted backfield, and I think that the Ravens are going to give, even with everything that's gone on with Kenneth Dixon, I think they're going to give him the keys. I don't know if they're going to try and bring in a veteran. There have been rumblings from the general manager, the owner, and the head coach at times talking about how they want to bring in a game-breaking running back. There are a lot of things linking them, saying that Kenneth Dixon could be that guy, but I personally think that they might go out and try and bring in yet another veteran, let one or two of these other guys walk or try and sign them to the practice squad again. I just think it's going to be too murky for Alex Collins. Now, if Alex Collins comes out and gets named the week one, three-down back, he is the starter, I think his value goes much, much higher because he played in 15 games, and in those 15 games, it was a pretty split committee, and he still had, 970-some yards, 6 touchdowns. He was good. But he didn't actually get a game where he had at least 10 touches. I mean, his first game where he got into double digits was week 5 with 12 touches. 12, 15, 10, 18, 13. He only had 2 games on the season where he got 20 rushing attempts, which is what we would consider a full workload for a lead back. and he still finished here as your number 16 running back, a solid RB2. He's currently going in the mid-5th round as the 22nd running back off the board, but I could see him going right about where he finished, probably around the running back 15, 16, if he is the lead back in Baltimore. He may be a third down guy. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Jason?
I like this guy. I wish that, as CJ would say, I wish that the Ravens would stop all this foolishness and settle on the guy that's done a good job for them.
Yep.
And he's done a good job for them. When he got his opportunities, he was very, very good. And this is, like I've said before, a hot hand league. Hand the ball to him, man. He's hot. He's picking up yards. I think that it would be very nice to see him and Kenneth Dixon as a nice 1-2 punch possible when Dixon comes back. And maybe Dixon does earn that role as the top dog. But at the moment, I think you go forward with this guy. I mean, he's done very well. And like you said, he had, 6 touchdowns or 5 touchdowns. And they all happened in the course of 4 weeks when he was the guy there. He was the guy. Green Bay, Houston, Detroit, and Pittsburgh. Yep. He absolutely dominated in those games.
Yep. 6 rushing touchdowns. He got it done in limited workload. He barely 200 rushing attempts.
Absolutely. And he had 113 yards in Miami. I mean, the guy's good. He was the best running back on you guys' roster. So, yeah, I would love to see them clear some of these names out and hand him the keys to the kingdom. Let him go for it. And if Dixon comes in and earns his spot back, then fine. But at the moment, you guys' lead back should be Alex Collins.
Well, we'll see. I think they believe that out of the top candidates, Terrence West excluded, he is probably the weakest pass catcher. So I think that's part of their concern as well. He's kind of an undersized back, which, I mean, we have a history of in Baltimore. I mean, look at Ray Rice, but he's only 5'10", so maybe that's a concern. He's young. He's going to be barely 24 at the start of the season. Now, I know everyone's probably thinking, but guys, he's a free agent. No, he's an exclusive rights free agent, which means basically if Baltimore offers him a contract, he can either sign that or not play. So he'll be back in Baltimore next year, I highly anticipate. So it's murky. Free agency is going to be very telling. I could see them maybe trying to bring in someone like as much as it kind of pains me to say. I could see them pursuing maybe at a veteran minimum, like a DeMarco Murray or something, just to add a veteran presence.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah, a 3-down back kind of thing, which is kind of exciting and also meh at the same time for me. So I don't know. We're a month away from free agency, and that will help clear up a lot of things. Then, of course, the draft will confuse everything more. So we'll see.
Maybe C.J. Anderson?
No, they wouldn't trade for him. Maybe if they were. I thought about that a couple days ago, and I like the talent of C.J. Anderson. I think he'd be a good fit. I think he would honestly remind me kind of as a kind of hybrid between Jamal Lewis and Ray Rice there, because a little bit smaller but beefier running back. And I could see him being a decent fit for what we're trying to do in Baltimore. We wouldn't trade for him.
It could happen.
I don't think we would trade for him because it'll be worth too much. If he gets released, I think we might, maybe for a veteran minimum, they might go after him. So we'll see. But yeah. So anyway, we're rambling on a little bit. But Alex Collins currently going as the 22nd running back off the board. I have to say that is at the very least the value for him with how murky it is right now. Maybe even later, depending on what we hear. So hopefully you're not drafting right now. If you are, maybe let someone else take the shot at Alex Collins, because there's a very real chance he could be the second, third running back in the progression, maybe even further back than that, depending on guys like Danny Woodhead. So we'll see. It's something that's going to take some time to get some clarity for sure, and we might not get that until the preseason. Let's move on, though, to the guy that we just talked about, number 17, which was C.J. Anderson, 147 points, less than 1 point behind Alex Collins. He is going as the 30th running back off the board, as the 5th pick in the 7th round, drafted as the 21st running back, so he was middle of the 4th. I would say he returned on value. He gave you a full season, even with a busy backfield and a team that couldn't really move the ball effectively through the air. I understand where he's going in the 7th round right now, only because we don't know where he's playing next year. We don't know what his situation is, his circumstance. If you're drafting right now, you are throwing a dart at a guy who is also, as we've mentioned many times in the show, dealing with, plenty of injuries throughout his career. So what are your thoughts on C.J. Anderson, Jason?
Yeah, it's murky. I mean, they're talking about him being on the trading block, and the fact that he did not have the best year. There were some really nice games he had. Dallas was a really good game where he went for 118 yards and 2 touchdowns. Cincinnati was not Cincinnati. I'm sorry. What am I saying? I meant Oakland. Oakland was a good game. 95 yards on the ground. 158 yards in Indianapolis. So that was a great game for him. I mean, he broke 1,000 yards. In a muddled backfield, as you said. So the talent is clearly there. It's just we need to see some consistency, and I think he needs to be the guy somewhere. Now, I don't know if they're willing to commit to that in Denver. So maybe it would be good to see him move to a new place. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things that time will tell. And where he lands and the opportunity that he's given in that new landing spot will be a huge indicator of his fantasy value. I don't know, because they have Devontae Booker there, which honestly he's flash, but I just feel like when given consistent opportunity, he's underwhelmed. Jamal Charles, I don't actually know Jamal's status for next year. Let me look that up really quick. But if he stays in Denver, let's just start there. Let's theorize he stays in Denver, they make a run at one of these top quarterbacks. They get Kirk Cousins, they go out, they get Nick Foles, maybe they trade for him. One of these guys. What is the value of him then? Does it go up or does it stay where it is right now?
I think it depends on what they do with any of these other guys in the backfield. I mean, Freeman, like you said. Or Booker, rather. Sorry, Freeman. Where am I? Booker, like you said, I don't think he's a thing. I think he's a gadget player, a third down guy. They're going to plug in every now and then.
Yeah. Okay, that's right. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. That's right. Jamal Charles did sign a 1-year contract last year, so he is a free agent. All right.
Right. So, and Charles, I don't think they'll sign him to bring him back. He'll probably go somewhere else. So, I mean, with that, if that's the mindset, then yeah, I think his with a good quarterback, with a more solid situation at the quarterback position, I think his value will go up.
Yeah, I could see it. So I don't know. We'll see. It's murky. If you're drafting right now, I would take a shot at C.J. Anderson because I think he's either going to be the starter in Denver, which will be an increased and upgraded offense because. I mean, we've seen, obviously, Brock Osweiler, Paxton Lynch, Trevor Siemian. None of those guys are the answer. They know that. They also have Chad Kelly, who I'm talking about there.
Hey,
they don't believe in any of these guys. They've openly said they're going to go get someone, and I think that will upgrade the offense. They've got the wide receivers to make this offense move. Virgil Green is there at tight end, who has proved to be useful. Jake Butt, a lot of people like him. There's weapons to move the ball. Don't judge me. Cody Latimer and Benny Fowler on the benches. I think they're both still there behind Demaryius Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders. I think this offense could move. So I think if he stays, he's going to be decent as long as he stays healthy. And I think as long as he's not traded, if he's able to leave it during free agency, someone will pick him up and they'll pay him to use him. So
well, also look at who the quarterback is. As you said, these two quarterbacks, or three rather. That defenses were like, let's stack the box and make these guys throw the ball. Because they're not good. They've proven it. So now if you get a Kirk Cousins in there, who clearly can throw the ball down the field, and he's got Emmanuel Sanders and Demaryius Thomas to throw to, then you got to respect that. You're not going to be able to stack the box. C.J. Anderson's going to get an opportunity to break some runs.
I agree. I mean, we'll be seeing the C.J. Anderson of the Peyton Manning days where he was averaging close to 5 yards a carry, getting 8 touchdowns in one season. So I mean, I think he could return to that form and be much more valuable. And a lot of people, like I've said since we started talking about him in the news, believe in the talent of him. I think he passes the eyeball test. It boils down to opportunity. So I like C.J. Anderson. Right. If I know he's going in the 7th round, I would probably be willing to invest slightly higher than that for sure to make sure I get him. I'd be comfortable throwing a 6th round pick at him. Maybe even a 5th. So, yeah, I think he's going very late, and he could be a steal right now. It's obviously way too early to tell for sure. We'll know more in a month, but right now, as the 5th pick in the 7th round, I would absolutely take him there or earlier.
Yep.
Let's keep it moving, though. Number 18, we have Frank Gore, 144 fantasy points. He has a long-running history of being a top 12 running back. Well, it didn't happen this year, which is unfortunate. But, what are you going to do? So, Frank Gore declining. He had less attempts per game. He had slightly less yardage. He had slightly less touchdowns. I mean, declining very, very, very slightly. I think he's still good, but he's 34. He's going to be 35 at the beginning of the season. He's ancient. He's at the end of his contract. He's said the only way he comes back to Indianapolis is if Andrew Luck is actually healthy because he wants to compete. But do you think he's able to even sign a contract anywhere else?
I don't see why not. I mean, yeah, he's old, and I'm sorry, but he's old. He's been doing this forever. But this is the thing, like you said, he has the one thing that you need, and that's consistency. He is a consistent running back. Even this year, he had a decent year. He did take a step back, but you know what? So did the entire team. That whole team was not good this year. And he came in a shade under 1,000 yards, even with a horrible team and a turnstile as an offensive line to run behind. So they upgrade the offensive line. Andrew Luck comes back and makes people respect the throw again. All these kinds of things happen. Frank Gore is right back to being a top 12 guy. So I think if I'm a GM in the NFL that has a decent young running back who needs someone else to complement him, I would definitely take a shot on Frank Gore. I mean, the guy has a record of being a top runner.
Yeah, I don't know. I just see the most logical because there's just crazy youth movement at the running back position. I mean, most of the best top running backs in the league are, I think all of them are actually this year in their low to mid 20s. So, I mean, here you've got a guy who's 34. He'll be 35. That's really old to be paying a guy. He's been great. He's been consistent. He is a rock. He is fighting Father Time. He is the Tom Brady of the running back position. And he was able to put up these numbers while splitting touches for a period of time with Marlon Mack. So it's a situation that is going to be interesting to monitor what he does, where he goes, what he gets offered, and if he returns to Indianapolis and Andrew Luck comes back, if he's able to take a step forward with what we assume will be a improved offensive line because they want to keep Andrew Luck upright. So Frank Gore is interesting to me. He's currently going as a late 7th round pick as the 33rd running back off the board. So, I mean, as a flex option, a guy who finished as a running back 2 last year, another year older, admittedly. What are your thoughts on that value?
I mean, if he's there at that, I'll take him for sure.
You'll take him late 7th?
Well, okay. At the moment, he's still going to be a starter. He's still going to be that starting guy. It depends on where he goes. If he leaves Indianapolis, for sure, then yeah. I mean, then there's a big old question mark. But if the situation stays exactly the same, you're absolutely right. I would definitely take him at that value.
Yeah, I'd take a stab at him at that value for sure, especially depending on what my team needs are. As a flex or a depth option, his situation will be telling. If I know he's the starter, I love that value. If it's a little bit murkier, I might wait another round or two and see if he's still floating around out there. But, I mean, the upside is obviously there. It's just he's got a lot of the narratives that can kind of intimidate you a little bit. So another guy who has a lot of those narratives built in is the next guy on this list. Your number 19 running back on the season, Marshawn Lynch, 144.2. So he was less than half a point behind Frank Gore. Jason, you were the Marshawn Lynch truther of the show last year by far. Tell me what happened.
All right. Well, Marshawn obviously let me down last year, and it wasn't. Part of it was they wouldn't hand him the ball. Okay, you got a guy like Marshawn Lynch. This is the beast. You have to feed the beast. You can't give him celery and a tomato and be like you'll be fine. No, this is the beast. You got to let him eat, and they didn't let him eat. Until near the end of the season, the end of the season, they finally said, okay, let's start handing the ball to Marshawn and see what happens. And then suddenly, 67 yards, 67 and a touchdown, 101 a touchdown, 61 and a touchdown. Started scoring. And he started looking like Marshawn Lynch. So I think this was an adjustment period. I think that I put way too much faith in that Raiders offensive line. I thought they were going to be great this year. They were not great this year, and Lynch suffered.
Yeah.
But now you got John Gruden in there, and you're going to have a healthy Derek Carr back. They're probably going to address the offensive line because it's John Gruden. So I think that he'll be good. I'm going to obviously I've learned my lesson. I'm going to temper my expectations with Marshawn Lynch. However, I still think he's going to be a good option. He's going to be better next year than he was this year, and I think he will stay with Oakland.
Yeah, his problem was he was wildly inconsistent. I mean,
right.
Like we talked about, he was good in spurts, but this team just didn't really know how to use him. As much as we know Jack Del Rio was raving about him, they never really got him going until after their Week 10 bye. And even then, it was kind of spotty. So, I mean, like you said, they weren't feeding him. They weren't giving him the ball. He is definitely one of those backs that needs 20 touches. He wears down the defense. He finds a soft spot. He keeps hitting it until he punches through, and then he makes a big play happen. That's what he does even in his age 31 season. He'll be 32 this year. Last year under contract. But I have to ask, Jason, do you think he'll be back? New regime, new coach, new staff. This offensive line proved they're better at pass pro than they are for run blocking, and he's basically signed a one-year deal last year. And this year he's owed $6 million, but they can cut him for nothing. Zero dead cap. Is he back?
I think he'll be back. I think he's a John Gruden-style running back. I mean, Gruden loves those bruisers that can pound a line, and who's better than Marshawn Lynch at that? And like you said, I think Gruden's going to know how to use him. I think Gruden's going to be like, I'm going to wear out the middle of your defense with this battering ram I got. I'm with this hammer back here. I'm just going to hammer you for 3 quarters, and then in the fourth quarter, you're not going to know what to do anymore, and then we're going to start breaking through the line. That's John Gruden football. So I would expect to see Marshawn Lynch back next year, yes.
Yeah, I could see it going either way. I think it's going to boil down to their needs in free agency and if they need to clear up that money, because if they do, I think they'll be looking to get rid of him probably pretty quickly. Jalen Richard and DeAndre Washington are both guys behind him that we know that they like. They were trying to work them in during the middle portion of the season where guess who suffered because he wasn't getting the touches? Marshawn Lynch.
Yep.
So I could see going forward they're still trying to work with both of them because I believe they're both still on the rookie deals this next year. I'd have to check. But I'm pretty sure they're both under contract for cheap. So, I mean, they could draft someone else. They could pick up a free agent. If they're underwhelmed. Now, I agree that John Gruden, I think he might be able to get a good amount of value out of Marshawn. And I actually do like the fit. I don't think it's going to be a smooth transition, but I think that it could work.
No.
So, I mean, there's a lot of question marks. So I'll ask you this. He finished number 19. He's currently going as number 20 as the 8th pick in the 4th round, so a mid to late 4th round pick. Is that too rich for you on Marshawn, or are you a believer that they'll really get it going, and even though he'll be 31, 32 this year, he'll be able to return on that value or better?
If he stays with the team, I would definitely take him in the 4th round.
All right. And, well, I mean, I think it's either Oakland or nothing, so I think it's a matter of staying with the team or retiring. So, yeah, I agree with that statement.
That's what I'm saying.
So, all right, yeah, Marshawn Lynch, it sucks because I want to make all these comparisons about trends on his career, but none of them are really viable because he took a year off and he's on a completely different team. So, we just kind of have to take it on this 1-year sample size and accept the fact that things are going to be very different next year, and we'll see if he's even there. If he's there, I'm okay with a late 4th round, early 5th round pick on Marshawn, depending on what we're hearing. I would probably like to take him a little bit later, if I'm honest, but I could see a world where he definitely returns on that value. Let's keep it moving, though. How are we doing on time? I don't even know. I haven't been watching it. Wow, we are already over. All right, so these last 5 guys, rapid fire. We have Latavius Murray, 142.5 fantasy points. He's currently going as the 52nd running back off the board, even though he finished 20th. And I'm not surprised by this even a little bit because guess what? He got his opportunity. And if you look at his game logs, it shows it. He had 2 attempts, 3 attempts, 2 attempts, 7 attempts in the first 4 games. Then Dalvin Cook got hurt, and then he got rolling. Dalvin Cook will be back next year. Dalvin Cook was notably better than either he or Jerick McKinnon were, which is why they both shared the backfield. So I think the value for Latavius Murray is not really there, especially because he's potentially going to be a free agent. We keep hearing that, they're probably going to, obviously Jerick McKinnon is a free agent, so they're probably going to keep him, but they have an out built into his contract if they need to save the money to go sign one of these quarterbacks. He's owed $6.3 million. They can cut him for only $1.2. So this is a slight narrative we've been hearing a little bit. I don't know if they're actually going to do it because I think they're going to want to have a backup to Dalvin Cook. Jerick McKinnon, obviously gone, so... as a late 11th, basically a 12th round pick, a late round flyer, you're basically drafting him as a handcuff because I don't think he has very much standalone value. Do you agree?
Agreed.
Yep. So anything you want to add or keep moving?
Keep moving. All
right, number 21, Duke Johnson. He finished with 142.1 fantasy points. Now, he finished 21st. He's going 43rd overall, this is kind of intriguing to me. He's going as the 7th pick in the 10th round. So, Jason, I ask you, what are your thoughts on that? Because, I mean, he was much more effective than Isaiah Crowell, and he was the pass-catching back.
Yeah, it's sad to say because I'm a big Crowell fan, but I think Duke Johnson's going to be more the guy there this year than he was this last year. I would definitely take him higher than what he's going right now because, again, I think he fits what they're doing better than Crowell did because they went away from it. And whenever they started getting down, and this team is still going to be playing from behind a lot because their young players are still getting better, So Isaiah Crowell's still not going to get a bulk of those carries. I think a lot of that love is going to go to Duke Johnson. So I would definitely take him higher than where he's going right now.
Well, I mean, obviously, I think all those touches are going to go to Duke Johnson, considering Isaiah Crowell is a free agent. But I don't expect him to come back. I don't know. I'm really torn on it.
I think he'll be back.
That's what I'm saying. I'm torn on it because the team seems to like him. Hugh Jackson seems to like him, and I mean they gave him a 1-year deal last year. So, well, it wasn't. Yeah. Was it one? No, he was a restricted free agent. So they gave him a 1-year tender. So I don't know. It's confusing. It's diluted, and this is a team that is going to make moves as it always does. Multiple first-round picks. Who knows if they grab a running back? I mean, we expect them to grab a quarterback. I've heard narratives where they grab 2 quarterbacks with their first 2 picks, and they make them compete, and then they've got value, and maybe they can trade one, and this, that, the other. The Browns are such a confusing situation, and obviously a situation where they have just not been good, that it's hard to get behind a fantasy player because you generally want players on winning teams because those offenses tend to move the ball more, get more points, especially the running backs. If their team is losing and falling behind, they don't get as many rushing attempts. So Isaiah Crowell, obviously, he is lesser value, and that's what we learned last year. This team was playing from behind too much, and therefore Duke Johnson got the opportunities. If Isaiah Crowell leaves, I like Duke Johnson a lot more if they don't bring anyone else in. If Isaiah Crowell comes back, Duke Johnson's value is scary to me, and then I think he's maybe only worth where he's going right now as a late 10th round pick. So this is a situation to monitor for sure. Anything you want to add, Jason?
If I'm the Cleveland Browns this year, they've got 2 picks in the top 5.
Yep.
I would go with a quarterback. And I would go with Saquon Barkley. I mean, the guy is awesome. By when? By the first pick?
No, not with the first pick. I think he'll be gone by their second pick.
Take him with the first pick, and then take one of those top 4 quarterbacks with your number 4 pick because they got the 4th overall pick. They could sweep and grab those 2 guys. As much as I like Isaiah Crowell, if I was the general manager, I'd have to think real hard about doing that because Saquon Barkley is the kind of back that could change your fortune.
Oh, yeah, he's being compared to Barry Sanders and a whole bunch of other elite Hall of Fame running backs. So Well, I mean, maybe it's way too much credit, but I mean, we've seen these top running backs the last couple of years. Look at them. You know, we already mentioned Todd Gurley in his rookie year, Ezekiel Elliott in his rookie year. Last year, there was a number of running backs that made it into the top. I mean, Leonard Fournette, obviously, Alvin Kamara. Yeah, that's true. David Johnson, if we go back a couple of years. So, yeah, these high elite rookie running backs, they translate well to fantasy generally. So, could he work out there, especially with his accolades? Sure. But, I mean, this is a team, it'll be free agency. I hate to keep saying this, but we're at that point. Free agency is going to be interesting to see if they bring in a veteran and then they draft a rookie to, learn behind him the old way, or if they're going to bring in a couple rookie quarterbacks, which is something that I keep hearing more and more, kind of these rumbles, that they might draft multiple quarterbacks to have them compete. We've seen that work in the past with other teams. It's been a while, but we've seen it. I mean, look at what happened in Washington. They took RG3, and then a couple rounds later, they took Kirk Cousins. So, it's
worked out well for them.
It did. I mean, it's all kind of imploded at this point, but it worked out well for them for a while.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But, yeah, we'll keep the ball rolling. But, yeah, Duke Johnson, his situation very much up in the air right now to determine his value going forward. Tevin Coleman, someone who is finished 22nd. He's going 25th right now. I think that value is accurate. He had 140 fantasy points. His value, unfortunately, is diluted as long as he is in Atlanta and he is behind Devonta Freeman. So, we like him. He's very useful. He's a good back. But much like Derrick Henry in Tennessee, as long as DeMarco Murray is there, he has standalone value, but he does not have top-tier fantasy value in his current predicament. What are your thoughts?
Well, unfortunately, with Sarkisian being the guy there now, I think that Tevin Coleman is more of a high-level handcuff.
I agree.
As long as Devonta Freeman stays healthy, he's the guy. And this guy, unfortunately, like you said, is going to be relegated to backup duties and be more of just a high-level handcuff.
Yep, he had considerably less touchdowns. He had less receiving yard usage. He actually had more rushing yards this year and more attempts, but he was also healthier for more of the season. He's yet to play a full 16 games, even as a backup running back, essentially. So
scary.
He has standalone value, like I said, but he's risky. Now, in the 6th round, I could get on board with that because that, as we mentioned when we were talking about Devonta Freeman gets banged up, and then Tevin Coleman gets a good volume. But you're talking about a high-level handcuff at that point. You're not getting, great starting value. It's a streaming option at best in the early 6th round. He has the first pick in the 6th round. You could easily say it a different way and say a late 5th round pick for this guy. So I don't know if I'm willing to do that because I like all my guys to be streamable at all times. I like to play matchups more, and though he has value, it's massively diluted unless, again, he's the starter because Freeman's hurt. So, yeah, Tevin Coleman. Let's do these last two real quick and get out here. DeMarco Murray, 132 fantasy points. So freaking frustrating this year. He was so inconsistent. I believe on the stats, we haven't been talking about bust rates as much here. We talk about it more on Patreon. But he busted over 40% of the time this season based on various different sites I've looked at that bracket them in those ways. He was incredibly inconsistent. He was not good. He was frustrating. I traded for him before the season started in our League of Record, and I had to suffer through him. He was only good at home and only in good matchups most of the time. He had a massive decrease in production when he played against good defenses. He was frustrating to own, and as we've heard extensively, probably going to be gone this season. He went from being so good in 2016 to not nearly that being the case in 2017, but they have an out on his contract. They can either pay him $6.5 million or they can cut him for nothing. They can cut him for free, and then Derrick Henry will finally get a chance to run, which I know a lot of people out there are just ecstatic about. Everyone, all those Derrick Henry truthers out there. I'm not necessarily among them, though I think he will be great when given the opportunity. I was always a believer that this was DeMarco Murray's backfield. That's what we were hearing. That's what we saw while he was healthy. But now that seems to be in transition. So DeMarco Murray, he's going as the 21st running back off the board as the 11th pick in the 4th round. And I have to say, That's too high for me because I don't know what his situation is next year. We don't even know if he's even going to be able to be playing next year. He's got a lot of tread on his tires. He just turned 30, so he's up there. He's got an unbelievable – he's got 1,600 carries on his body in the last 7 seasons. That's a lot. And, of course, he's got quite the injury history. So, Jason, I'm saying that's too high as of now because we don't know his situation. We expect him to be out of Tennessee, so we don't know where he's landing. What are your thoughts on DeMarco Murray? What is a value that makes sense for you?
I say that's too high even if we do know his situation. Even if he stays in Tennessee, I think that's too high. Like you said, massively inconsistent. When he was good, he was okay. I mean, he had a couple really nice games. One really nice game in Cincinnati where he scored 25 fantasy points. That's great, but that was his highest game. Everything else was mid to very low, and this is no longer something we can blame on the scheme. Because when he was in Philadelphia, you blamed it on the scheme. Well,
yeah.
He wasn't built for that scheme. It's not the right kind of scheme. He was built for this scheme. This exotic smash mouth.
We saw
This is DeMarco Murray style.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We saw it the year prior.
This year, absolutely, and he did not show up this year. The DeMarco Murray we saw the year before did not show up. So he is too inconsistent for me. I would definitely not take him there. I wouldn't take him till double-digit rounds.
Yeah, people expressed caution last year, even after having a great 2016, and he still went on average as the eighth running back, as the first pick in the second round. So a lot of people would argue that he definitely busted for you because a lot of people were taking him as their first pick, if not their very, very high-end second pick, and he finished as barely an RB2, and he was not even startable most weeks. So a lot of weeks he went out there, put up single-digit points, and that loses you weeks at a position like running back. So, yeah, DeMarco Murray, we'll have to monitor him more closely. I can tell you right now, if he's going in the 4th round, I will not be a part of that bidding war. And let's take it home. Number 24 on the season, Jerick McKinnon, 127 fantasy points. Not too much to say here, considering we already kind of talked about it. He was good in spurts, but he was sharing a backfield. He got almost nothing for the first 4 weeks because, again, it was the Dalvin Cook show. And then he was decent on volume, but he kind of treaded off towards the end of the year when Latavius Murray started getting a little bit hotter. He was a decent stat line. He was averaging only 3.8 yards per carry. He did bring in 51 receptions for 420 yards, which is, it's what you would expect from him. He's a pretty decent pass catcher. But again, he is a free agent and an unrestricted free agent, and we highly doubt he will be back in Minnesota, which means his value to me is not really much of anything unless he lands in an amazing situation where he's a starter, but I can't even project that right now. So Jerick McKinnon's a guy I'm not touching at this point until I know more. What about you?
Oh, I completely agree. I mean, he had his opportunity to be the guy, and he did have a couple of really nice weeks. I actually picked him up off the waiver wire, and he actually won me a couple of weeks. But overall, too inconsistent, just didn't show up certain games. And yeah, Latavius Murray was there, but come on, it's Latavius Murray. I mean, he should have been outperforming Latavius Murray. I want to see where he ends up before I make my decision on what I'm going to do with him this year. At the moment, he'd flex, maybe deep flex.
See, I think he's going to go somewhere and probably be a pretty high-level handcuff like he was essentially in Minnesota this year until Dalvin Cook went down. So, we've seen this guy since 2014, the last 4 or 5 years. He has had plenty of opportunities, whether it be behind Dalvin Cook or behind Adrian Peterson, and every time he got that opportunity, he's had some slight flashes, but ultimately he let you down, and I don't see a way that translates into good, consistent fantasy value. So, yeah, depending on the situation, double digits for me. I don't see me taking him any higher than that. That's going to do it for us. So, again, number 13, Devontae Freeman. Number 14, Lamar Miller. Number 15, Christian McCaffrey. Number 16, Alex Collins. Number 17, C.J. Anderson. Number 18, Frank Gore. Number 19, Marshawn Lynch. Number 20, Latavius Murray. Number 21, Duke Johnson. Number 22, Tevin Coleman. Number 23, DeMarco Murray. And number 24, Jerick McKinnon. That is the show. And then we're going to cover all the next two tiers, the flex flex option running backs on the Patreon show. So if you guys want to catch that, head over to patreon.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics. And if not, we'll see you on Tuesday when we're going to start a definitive wide receiver review. We keep hearing this is a passing league. Well, pass catchers were down this year across the board, so it'll be interesting to take a look at all that stats, the trends, and what happened. If you want to check out any more information, remember you can check out the website, thefantasyfootballfanatics.com. You can contact the show any number of ways on Facebook, on Twitter. You can do that at the FF Fanatics, or individually if you want to ask us questions. If you send us a question like our question of the day today, we can answer it on the air and have some fun. Give you a shout out. If you want to leave us a rating or review, we appreciate that. But if you want to follow us individually on Twitter, I'm at GPalmerFFF, and Jason is at JasonCabrera13. Yeah, so with that, any parting thoughts, Jason?
Hey, man, CJ, I hope you enjoyed your movie.
Yep. Wow. Yeah, this could have been you, man. You could have been helping us here. All right, we're out of here. Everyone, take care. Have a great weekend. We will see you on Tuesday, maybe with the full cast. I guess we'll see. All right, guys, bye.